Maybe the real premierships are the friends we made along the way. You're kidding. Have a look who is back. We return for episode number 2 of Fine Leg to Full Forward. What do you reckon, mate? Glad to be back?
Absolutely, mate. Keen to get into it. Round 2. Let's go.
Love to hear it. All right, before we kick things off, just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that tuned in for the first episode. We really appreciate your support. Thanks to those who've sent us messages, shared the show, followed us, subscribed, and commented, whatever it may be. We are super grateful.
Absolutely. I mean, being best mates, we're bound to have these conversations regardless of if the camera's on or not. But having other people listen to us makes it a lot more special. So thanks again.
Oh, bloody hell. All right, and I just want to point out, we are going to be improving week to week. Like a freshly drafted big key forward, we're going to get there. I feel like this is a show of the people, for the people. So, as you mentioned last week, Ashwin, the people love an underdog, don't they? So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Stick with us, guys. There's going to be improvements, camera improvements, which you can probably already tell, mic improvements, general upgrades to the production. As I said, we're going to get there. And when we're out of ISO and, Ashwin's cleaned himself up a bit, tied himself up, we're going to be able to record together, get a proper setup. We're going to be close to unstoppable. So, let us be your underdogs. Let us be the feel-good story that you follow, because we appreciate the shit out of each and every one of you. Now, mate, I'm trying to think if there's anything at all that's happened in the sporting world worth mentioning.
Throughout in the past week?
In the past week, just the sporting world at all. Anything comes to mind?
I'm glad you've given me the floor to start off with, mate. I know there's been a lot of talk, a lot of pressure on one individual in particular over the past week. So, look, I'm just going to cut to the chase. Tim Payne's century in the Sheffield Shield was phenomenal. 111 not out. And I just couldn't be more proud of him,
Yeah, that's what everyone was thinking. I'm glad we let the cat out of the bag early, because there's no point beating around the bush. Let it be known. Of course, what he meant to say was the WBBL 06 has kicked off, back in full swing, despite Mother Nature's best effort to stop it happening. But glad to have that back.
Absolutely, and us both being cricketers, and I'm sure lots of people that are listening are cricketers themselves. I've always thought that there's a scientific relationship, if you will, between games of cricket taking place and crappy weather. And I think this just proves it. It's just more evidence for it, really.
Yep. I remember under 15s would have been, the crappy weather tells us cricket season's back. And this year seems to be no different.
That's it.
All right, enough pissing around. Okay. Obviously, that one day in September has again found itself in October. Richmond and Geelong went head-to-head in a historic night grand final at the Gabba, as we all know. And the Tigers secured another premiership, and, they've definitely cemented themselves as a dynasty, like we mentioned in episode 1. What do you think, mate?
Yeah, most definitely, mate. As we mentioned, 3 flags in 4 years. It's an incredible achievement. And I know we did say it's not all about numbers when we talk about premierships and flags, but and dynasties, but you've got to give it to them. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, we'll leave it up to everyone else to determine just exactly where they sit with those great teams we mentioned last week, but they absolutely deserve to be right up there, which is a little painful for me to say. Personally, as we can all imagine, I was very emotional after the game. We all know why, but I've recovered, and I think I'm just about ready to discuss it. Congrats to the Tigers, very deserved winners again. we've spoken before about how good they are. They've been the standard of the competition for a number of years now. And it's just so impressive that the hunger has never seemed to waver throughout that period. If we talk about the game, I'd say probably with the exception of the second quarter, Richmond at times just looked as though they had 4 or 5 more blokes on the ground. They just played so well and really forced Geelong to play the game on their terms.
Yeah, spot on. And you mentioned the word hunger, and I think that's the great word to sort of describe their defensive pressure. And it's been like that. It wasn't just on the weekend. It's nothing new. They've played like that for a very long time, and it's that defensive pressure, that intense defensive pressure. You always feel like they're around, and it's why they've scored more from turnovers than pretty much any other team in the AFL. It's that defensive pressure that they have and their presence like that.
It shouldn't really be a surprise to anyone, to be honest. In that second quarter when Geelong were up by 3 and a bit goals, I feel like the Cats were playing the game their way, playing that possession footy with a short kick, and they've come to be known for. But in the second half, the Tigers, forced them to kick long down the line to a contest, which led to more sort of chaos footy, for want of a better term, which obviously suited Richmond a lot more. And I guess the final score ended up reflecting that. You could argue that it felt a lot closer than the 5-goal margin ended up being. I don't know if that's just me, but up until the fourth quarter, it did kind of feel that way. But at the end of the day, the better team won. Dusty, unbelievable on the big stage yet again. 4 goals, 21 touches. Congrats to him on making history and becoming the first ever 3-time Norm Smith medalist in AFL history. Fair achievement, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you might have mentioned, like, there was quite a bit of hype around Dusty. He's had a lot of being a big time player. When you get to big games, you've also got that added pressure and hype that comes along with it.
It's interesting you say that, because a few people did mention that he'd had a fairly quiet final series leading into the grand final, which is probably a little unfair, as you've alluded to, because we've come to expect so much from him. But I think as the week got on, the majority of people in the footy world, in the media, were building him up and up, and he was a lot of people's tip for the Norm Smith in the end, and he really lived up to the hype, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. In that game, stunning. And I think it's about the clutch moments with hype, when you're a hype player like that. And one that really stood out to me was, as you mentioned, in the second quarter, Geelong played mainly on their terms with a short kick, and they had good control of the footy. And I think they led by about 20 plus at some stage. But I remember a point when Dusty just created something out of nowhere and kicked a goal right before halftime. And I don't know how much that would have, I think it brought it back to 15 points or something. But even just that itself, stopping Geelong's momentum, creating a little bit of momentum for Richmond, I think that in itself is pretty special.
Well, one thing I've noticed about the Cats, no matter, this is a little bit biased, a little bit of frustration, I think. No matter what stage of the game, no matter how close the game is, we will always concede a goal in the last minute and a half, 2 minutes. And it happened again, and it proved to be arguably the turning point of the game. And they just ran away with it. As we said, the better team won. And Dusty, he definitely lived up to the hype, which got us thinking, didn't it, mate? One of the questions this week is, when else have we seen players, teams, events, whatever it may be, when have they lived up to the hype? I think that's the big one this week. And the first one that I want to talk about would be the 2006 Grand Final. Now, I'm sure that footy fans would remember the rivalry between the Swans and the Eagles during the mid-2000s. Obviously, the two consecutive grand finals they faced off in 2005, 2006. Sydney obviously won in 05 by a grand total of 4 points. And it gave us such a memorable footy moment, arguably one of the most famous marks in the history of AFL. We all know I'm talking about Leo Barry, you star. Stephen Quartermain's immortalised words, I believe.
That's right. What a moment. And what a game. What a rivalry between two incredible clubs. And I can't say I followed footy as much as I do now, back then, being much younger, but I do remember being up in Sydney for the 2005 grand final when the Swans got up. Most of my family live up in Sydney, so we were up in Sydney for that game, and I remember quite a lot of hype around that game. But when you get 2006, same rivalry continues. It's bound to create hype.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they played each other twice between those two grand finals. The first was round 15, and then they played each other in week 1 of the finals, the qualifying final. Now, the margin in round 15 was 2 points. And then in the qualifying final, it was a singular point. So, these two teams, they just couldn't help themselves to, classic matches back then, could they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, you mentioned about being up in Sydney for the 2005, but to 06, do you remember anything about the build-up of the game at all? Like how the public thought that the granny was going to go? They must have expected a good game.
Yeah, I think obviously in Melbourne, so you had two interstate teams. So that obviously plays its part. It's slightly different. But when you've got two formidable teams like that, with a good track record, like you said, of producing absolute nail biters, I think the hype just builds itself, mate. Like when you've got two teams that sort of, I think of me being a North Melbourne supporter.
We managed to get through last week's episode without that coming up. You managed to sneak that one past everyone.
I had to bring it up at some point in time. For me, always being a North supporter, and my brother always being a Essendon supporter, growing up, we felt like whenever we played each other, North versus the Bombers, regardless of where we were on the ladder, whether both teams were on the ladder, most of the time they produced nail biters, good games, hype. And I think here, when you've got two good teams with a good track record of producing nail biters, the hype builds itself.
Yeah, I'd say that game, it definitely lived up to the hype. Obviously, the Eagles got their revenge and they won the flag that year. Another game between the two of them that was decided by a point. And another grand final with a classic bit of commentary, with it being Anthony Hudson's "Who would have thought the sequel would be as good as the original?" And yeah, another bit of classic commentary, as we said. To be at any of those games between those two during that period, let alone either of the grand finals, must have just been unbelievable.
Yeah, a beautiful piece of history, mate. Absolutely. And well, speaking of history, one name that I think is bound to go down in history, Gary Ablett Jr. Over the weekend, obviously, from a unbiased perspective, from neither a Geelong fan or a Richmond fan, I definitely wanted the best for him. He's been an absolute star for so long, and it's definitely sad to see him go, but it's provided us with lots of good footy moments, amazing footy moments.
Yeah, well, obviously, as you mentioned, he's just retired, but he did come into the league with one of the most famous names in footy, didn't he? If not the most famous name. Obviously, Gary Ablett Sr., one of the best to ever play the game. Some still consider him to be the best ever, and he's got to be right up there. Obviously, the first thing that springs to mind about him is the goal kicking, and rightly so, being a member of the 1,000-goal club, but the prowess and the versatility of the man, they're undeniable, right?
Absolutely. Anyone that's part of that prestigious club is already obviously footy royalty. But also it's a different generation. So I feel like it is sometimes hard to compare players like that, but his greatness was undeniable, mate.
Yeah, and he must have always had that pressure. But he was like junior. He was always fully immersed in the game as a child. Like he was always around the Geelong Footy Club, on the training track, in the rooms, almost embracing it at such a young age, almost like he knew what his name meant to footy fans. I remember I was reading, he was asked about all the pressure after his very first game, and he responded with something like, I just go out there and pretend I'm another one of the boys. There's not much else I can do, I guess, which to me kind of demonstrates such a level-headed individual, which we've all come to know he is now. But back then, to block out all the pressure and then go on to have the career that he had, I mean, there's not much he didn't achieve, right? I mean, 357 games, 2 flags, 2 Brownlows, 8 All-Australians, 6-time BNF winner, 5 MVPs. Not only did he live up to the hype, but you could say he had a better career than his dad, right?
Arguable, absolutely. I mean, it probably comes back to that generational thing. I think each generation's probably biased to sort of like their own generation a bit more. But you could definitely make that case, because and the fact that he's been such a different player to his dad as well. It wasn't like he was the exact same player. It was a very different style player.
Definitely.
And yeah, absolutely. He like you said, level-headed, and being able to, just pretend you're one of the boys. Maybe that's how you sort of deal with hype. You put that to the side and you sort of say, I'm just going to do this.
Pretty much, yeah. You've almost got to block it out. So, he's definitely one that lives up to the hype. Congrats to him on a wonderful career. As you alluded to, Ashwin, it could have been a fairy tale finish for him. But, we do wish him all the best in retirement. Can I also just mention as well, I did notice this. It came to light, I think, yesterday or the day before. There was a picture taken when Richmond and Geelong were giving him the Guard of Honour after the game. Can I just say as well, full credit to Richmond for actually pausing the celebrations to give him the Guard of Honour. Like that is a class act. So fair play to Richmond there.
Absolutely. I think I saw very just in the mid celebration, even when the cameras were sort of wild and everything. I think I saw. I think it was Jack Riewoldt went up to
Dangerfield.
Dangerfield, that's right. And he sort of just said, we're going to cheer him off. Or he was sort of talking about it straight away. And that's, amidst the hype of winning a grand final, that's very respectable.
But not only that, it was brought to our attention. They all took off their premiership medals to give them the Guard of Honour, which is just, unbelievable. As I said, class act by the Richmond Footy Club. So full credit to him there. But going back to hype, I think moving away from footy a little bit here, but an athlete that has probably come under the most scrutiny worldwide, going on a much bigger scale here, would probably be LeBron James, right? We've spoken about GOATs of footy, but he's another possible GOAT of his game.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you bring up his name and you bring up the GOAT word, obviously you bring up controversy as well. You're bound to stir someone up the wrong way when you bring it up. But look, he's had pressure right from the word go, right? And he's definitely delivered on the big stage.
Yeah, well, like Gaz, there's not much he really hasn't achieved in his sport. He's a 4-time NBA champion and finals MVP, 4-time regular season MVP. You could argue he deserved a couple more. We could debate that. We're not going to. 16-time NBA All-Star, countless All-NBA appearances, couple of Olympic gold medals as well, just to round that out. I mean, that's a pretty good resume. He's got a real chance of ending his career with the most points ever in NBA history, which is ridiculous for someone who's not someone who's a pass first guy. It's unbelievable. Like he's also climbing the list in assists and rebounds too. Yeah,
absolutely. And as you know me, mate, I love pass first play. I love assists. I love flashy passes. So I'm not sure what he averages in assists per game, but even this season, I think it's been up close to 10, right?
Yeah, he led the league in assists this year at age 35 or whatever he is. Yeah.
There you go.
But the hype surrounding LeBron as a high schooler is unprecedented. Like, he was still in high school being compared to Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, all right up there in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And to have so much commentary like that around a 17, 18-year-old, to be as good as, or if not surpass them, it's ridiculous. I mean, on his draft notes, one of the weaknesses mentioned was all this hype at a young age, to live up to it is like inconceivable. Can he stay focused and continue to work hard to improve his game? It was all around him.
And that's like, that note is so true. Like, when you've got all the eyes of the basketball community on you, right from that early age. I mean, there's been so many number one draft picks in the NBA that have sort of just cracked under pressure, failed. And
we could spend a whole episode talking about them.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's definitely that added sense of pressure, and some people can deal with it. Other people struggle.
Yeah, I mean, the one weakness to be an external impression of you. I mean, there's not really much you can do about that, is there? But yeah, he's just kept his head down his entire career to achieve not only what he's achieved on the court, but also off the court. Setting up the LeBron James Foundation, the founding of the I Promise School in Ohio, and standing up for all the social justice issues that he believes in. Whether you think politics should remain out of sports or not, I'm personally a fan of people who use their profile or their platforms for good. But regardless of what you think of it, I mean, there's no denying the greatness of the man, and he's got to be one that lives up to the hype, right? You think hype, you think LeBron James.
Absolutely, that's pretty much the definition of the word. I mean, with the political stuff as well, I think I'd agree with you as well. I don't think athletes should be forced to post about things, but I also don't think that they should be forced not to. I think it should be up to the individual.
Yeah. No, definitely.
But I mean, going from LeBron, I mean, let's just take the Lakers of 2020. We're talking about hype. We're talking about pressure. We've got expectation.
Absolutely.
I think it sort of goes hand in hand. Right. I mean, this whole NBA season has been slightly different, the whole bubble in Orlando. But from this sort of the 2020 playoffs, I remember the first round when they went down to the Trailblazers in Portland in game one, I think it was. And lots of people were sort of saying, they're just choking under the hype, the pressure it's getting to them. They've got all these big names, but they really pulled through, even just making moves like trading for Anthony Davis.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you spot on. Like, going back to the start of the season there, where, the preseason where they traded for Anthony Davis, they got rid of a pretty good young core, like a team of the future. And it really was sort of championship or bust for them this season. And there was a lot of hype. There was a lot of pressure because a lot of people picked the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Obviously, they never really got to go head-to-head against them, given they were knocked out by the Denver Nuggets. But, you can only beat who's in front of you. And they absolutely lived up to the hype this year and obviously went all the way.
Absolutely. I don't know if we take it. I mean, I'm thinking back to the Grand Final, AFL Grand Final.
Yeah, go for it.
Back to hype. We can't go past Dusty. We've already brought him up before. We've mentioned him, but there's just something about. Well, my big question for today, I guess, would be the word X factor, and the question I have is, do you think I mean, we all know what it is, but we can't really describe it using words. It's not something that you can, I don't think it has a clear-cut definition, but it's something that you see it in certain players, and when you see it, you know what it is. But
no, absolutely, yeah.
I just, do you think that this X factor, this notion of X factor, is something that people can sort of learn over time? Do you think you could sort of develop this skill of clutch like X factor, or do you think it's like certain players are just born with it? You're born with this X factor ability.
It's X factor is an interesting one. I feel like athletes can work and work to perfect their craft, improve their fitness, work on their goal kicking, marking, whatever it is. But I feel like X factor is something intangible. It goes back to that presence of the best that you mentioned last week. The ability to change a game, turn it on its head off your own boot. I don't think it's something that can be learned. I don't think it's something that's found in everyone. And when it's there, you have to appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like we said, when you see it, you know it's there. And you can definitely appreciate it. It's just that clutch. And when I talked about Dusty before, like having a fairly average final series up until the grand final.
For Dusty.
For Dusty, absolutely. Don't hurt me. And then kicking the four goals in the granny, 21 touches or something, and really turning it on is absolutely the X factor.
I feel like, hype and pressure of performing, it's something that's always going to be part of footy and, part of any kind of sport or, lots of other things in life, let's be honest. But I feel like it is a vital part of the game because it really separates the best from the rest. The big stage is where you see the elite flourish and rise to the top. To be the best, you've got to beat the best. And we've seen it.
we have, yeah. And you can sort of differentiate it when you see it. When you see it live, when you see someone, make that bucket, take that shot, that game-winning shot, or kick after the siren, and you know that they're going to seize the moment.
Absolutely.
You're seeing it.
Yeah. He's almost becoming the definition of X Factor, isn't he, Dusty? If he's not already. All right. Before we move on to our other segments, what did you think of the night grand final? Love to hear your thoughts.
I wasn't actually too phased by it. I like the night sort of atmosphere. I think it brings something else to it. Mm-hmm. But I guess the downside was the build-up was very different. I mean, I'm used to waking up and you've got the grand final breakfast and you've got this after this, and then
it's a long breakfast, isn't it, when it's a night game?
Yeah. Can't go for that long, can you?
Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know, Ashwin's a slow eater, but I think even he would struggle with that.
Yeah, but for me personally, I wasn't too phased by it. Like I thought it had some positives. I enjoyed parts of the lights, and I think it created its own atmosphere. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the downside for me would be the build-up was you'd have to, if it's going to be a long-term thing, I don't think it will be. But if it is going to be a long-term thing, I think they'd have to change the build-up, because otherwise it's just like another Saturday night footy game or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it felt right at all, to be honest. Right. Not only did it feel like a waste of a day in the lead up, just sitting there waiting for it. But I mean, I remember thinking on Saturday morning about 10:30, I'm like, bloody hell, I'm usually a few beers deep by now. Like I can't really start yet, can I? Bloody hell. usual festivities aside, it did just feel like a normal sort of Friday night, Saturday night game, as you said. Fair play to the AFL and especially, the Queensland government for getting us to that point. I think, footy fans should be very thankful that, we were able to actually have a season, because we know how much uncertainty there was after round one about whether, there'd be anything at all for us to watch to get us through. But having said that, I'm definitely hoping it's back into the G, back in the G next year, back as an afternoon game. There'll be people who agree, people who disagree.
Absolutely. You're going to get that with anything, mate.
So what did you guys think of the Granny being a night game? Comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, or slide right into our DMs on Instagram @FineLeg2FullForward and tell us your thoughts. While you're there, give us some more examples of things that have lived up to the hype. Whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you.
All right, time for the next segment, mate.
Yeah, I'm keen for this.
You keen? All right, so this is for those of you that didn't join us last week. This is footy folklore retold, and it's where one of us watches an old clip of a legendary AFL moment, and the other can't see it, but I'm going to watch it this week on mute. I'll be commentating over the top, and Luke's got to guess what moment it is before the time runs out.
So, I can't wait. You are nervous. I can tell you're nervous. You're delaying. Have you practiced?
No.
Oh, no. You have. You so have.
Nah. Yeah. I was sort of okay. So I was thinking about what voice. I was thinking about the voice. Because commentators, you gotta pick your voice. But then,
as I said last week, it's all energy.
That's right. It's energy. I just. Okay. All right. You ready?
Ready when you are, mate.
Here we are. Only 1 point, the difference. The ball is thrown in from the boundary in Collingwood's. Oh, geez. Oh, my goodness. Swan with the shepherd. Side bottom with the snap. And Gwilt runs back, takes an amazing, incredible defensive mark. He's been sensational today. Kicks down the line and revolt. What a absolutely sensational mark. The skipper is absolutely standing up today. What a grab in the defensive 50. He's going through the corridor. It's getting tight here. The target is Goddard. Pack forms. Ball spills. Lenny Hayes. Crumbs hacks it forward. The ball bounces. Mark. Stephen Mill 1-on-1. The ball bounces. The ball's bounced the wrong way. The ball has bounced the wrong way. It's gone through for a behind. We are all square. 68-68.
The drawn grand final.
Absolutely.
The bounce that cost the Saints the flag.
That's right.
Sorry to any Saints fans listening. When you said the target was Goddard, I thought it was the mark. You probably heard me saying it. I was like,
nah.
The actual mark.
Yeah. Look.
Your highlight was a ball bouncing the wrong way. I'm impressed. That's a very Ashwin highlight to select.
It's all about those moments, mate. I'm going to be honest. I definitely cooked the start of that up. But
look, there was a little bit where there wasn't a lot of commentary, but I feel like I could see it all in your eyes. Like your eyes were telling a lot more of a story than your mouth was.
We're keeping tabs, as we said last week, on who the
absolutely
who the better commentator is, and let's see if I get better over time.
Look, you got to start somewhere.
Right, that's right.
Alrighty, moving on. Now it is time for not who he played for, because that's what they call it on inside the NBA, but we'll probably call it which team, bro. As we mentioned last week, work in progress, so we'll see how that goes. So for those of you who tuned in last week, you'd be aware Ashwin gave me a current AFL player's name and his jumper number. Then he gave me 3 beautifully worded options, and I had to obviously try and guess the correct one. It's my turn this week. You ready?
Ready, mate.
Alrighty. So the player is Devon Robertson, who wears the number 2. Now, you gave me a high number last week. I've gone the other way. You gave me number 50. I've given you number 2 this week. Devon Robertson, number 2. Is he a young gun, big-bodied midfielder on the Brisbane Lions? Is he a clutch, level-headed key defender for the Western Bulldogs? Or is he a fiercely fast halfback flanker for the Fremantle Dockers?
Devon Robertson. Number 2, you said?
Number 2.
I'm not sure why. I don't think the number would make any difference at all. But I just wanted to.
You were trying to force an epiphany. That's what you were doing. I'll go through them again. So, is he a young, big-bodied midfielder on the Brisbane Lions?
Yep.
Is he a clutch, level-headed key defender for the Western Bulldogs?
Yeah.
Or is he a fiercely fast halfback flanker for the Fremantle Dockers?
Devon Robertson.
Yep, hasn't changed.
I wonder if I say it again, maybe. Okay.
Maybe there is a clue in the name. I didn't think about that.
Devon Robertson. I think you said, in the wise words of Luke Critchlow from last week, always go with C if unsure. So I'm going to go with the very fast, fierce halfback flank from Freo.
See, I do remember saying that last week, which is why I made sure not to put the correct answer. C. Devon Robertson is a young gun, big-bodied midfielder on the Brisbane Lions.
Brisbane Lions.
Yeah, there you go. No, bad luck, man. It's I've got you there.
You definitely did. Even thought about changing the number, changing C. That's very, I love it.
Very deliberate.
Of course. Next segment. I'm in charge of all around the socials this week. So
I'm interested to see what you pull up.
Yeah, I haven't gone as deep as you did last week, I don't think. But
you don't tend to spend as much time on social media.
No,
so I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I'm not big. I'm not huge on the socials, but I just put in the hashtag AFL Grand Final on Twitter. Scrolled down.
It's a really good start.
I got ran into the first one here. I've got something from Higo, and it is
big fan of the show. Higo.
Yeah. So we've heard, yes.
Yeah.
How do you fire up a crowd ahead of a grand final? An acoustic cover of a Cher song should do it.
Oh, the DMAs?
DMAs, yeah.
Yeah, look, it's a great cover. Didn't they do that as a version on Triple J?
Like a version on Triple J. And I think, what were your thoughts on did you catch the pre-game entertainment or?
I caught a bit of it. I always feel like music performances in those kind of stadiums, I always feel like they're not really going to sound the best. It's just so open. But I'm a fan of DMAs. It's as I said, it's a great song, just probably not a pump up song, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's what lots of people were sort of saying that on the socials. It wasn't really a pump up song, and they sort of said that about lots of the other artists that were picked. These things are always subjective, mate. Whenever you're a performer, you're performing, you've got people that have got different music tastes. I caught the entertainment, and it was very how do you put it? Very Triple J-ish. Lots of young Australian talent performed, and you've got Cub Sport, Thelma Plum, DMA. You've got lots of great names. And I thought it was pretty good. And also Wolf Mother there with Joker and Steve for some power, I think. And that probably provided the pump up. But like we said, mate, it's subjective. You're always going to have people that agree and disagree. People on different sides.
That's right. Even we do it every now and then.
That's right. All right. The second tweet that I've got, and the final one, is from Leila De Kretzer, and big fan of the show. I've heard.
She's a friend of the show.
Friend of the show. Sorry, not fan. Friend of the show.
Yeah, day one. She's day one.
Wait, Queenslanders don't even bother to strip before a streak.
Oh man.
Obviously talking about the streakers. I think there was a bunch of YouTubers jumped on the field during a game.
Yeah. I saw the video that they posted afterwards, like obviously the lead up to what they were planning on doing. It just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. Another reason it needs to come back down to Melbourne, I think. Speaking
of it not being worth it, as soon as I sort of saw streakers on the field, it brought me back to the last big time that it happened at the Gabba. And do you remember?
We've got to remember this. All of us do. Come on.
About 15 years ago, Australia versus India, one dayer, and a streaker runs onto the field, fully naked, as streakers normally are, a male.
Yeah, they did it properly back then.
Runs around, runs in circles, runs to the center of the pitch, runs across, meets Andrew Simons, and decides to swerve into Andrew Simons without properly thinking logically.
How big the bloke is.
Andrew Simons lifts up his arm and absolutely poleaxes him, and he goes flying. And look, what a moment.
Yeah, I mean, it was in the wrong season, a hip and shoulder like that, wasn't it?
Absolutely, mate.
Iconic.
Iconic.
Couple of rippers there, mate. Well done. You've done real well there.
Thanks, mate. What do you got? What have you got for me?
All right, moving on to On the Siren. All right, so like the last episode, we've got 3 players who you wouldn't usually trust to win the game off their boot. I think that's fair to say. But they've found their way into a potentially game-winning situation. You know, they've just clunked a big contested grab just before the siren. They're going to have to kick this, obviously after the siren, 40 meters on a slight angle. Not an overly difficult kick for a professional footballer. But these are my options for you this week, mate. You ready?
Ready.
Now, so for those of you who tuned in last week, you'd know Ashwin gave me 3 defenders. This week, I've given you 3 ruckmen.
Ooh, okay.
So the first, Tom Hickey of the West Coast Eagles. The second, you've got Riley O'Brien of the Adelaide Crows. And lastly, you've got Jared Witts of the Gold Coast Suns. They're my 3 for you, mate.
Very tough. How do I even analyze this in a way?
Mate, you can use whatever logic you want, as long as you get an answer. You can use whatever. I've had a bit of thinking about this, and I can guarantee you, I thought nowhere near as much as you're going to. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see how you take it.
So when I think about when you can't compare skill sets, when obviously none of these blokes are usually known for goal kicking, it's hard to compare anything physical in terms of physicality. It quite often, like it did last week, it goes to the mental.
Yeah, we judged on character, didn't we? And we
Character.
agreed on the kicker, didn't we?
Yeah.
Last week.
Who do you think is going to be able to sort of put their hand up and be like, no, I'm going to get the job done? I just don't. I have no way of differentiating, but I'm just going to say Tom Hickey because I like him slightly more than the other two. But
Ooh, all right.
But that's just a personal preference.
That, I mean, as I said, take it anywhere you want. I thought you'd think about it a little more than that, to be honest. But no, you've given me an answer. I'll take it. Look, my answer was also Tom Hickey. And do you want my breakdown? Do you want my reasoning?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
I'd probably go Tom Hickey because I think he's the best kicky. That's
so you've definitely thought about it a lot more than I have.
Yeah, I told you. Broke it down, really got into. Yeah, I'm talking out my ass. Yeah, that was all I did. Yeah. No, but there we go. We've agreed on another one. I'll see. We'll have to see if we can stump each other. See if we can't split the difference. All right, I think that's all we've got this week. Just want to say thanks so much for joining us for another episode. We hope you enjoyed it. And for those of you not aware, you can also find us on Spotify. But we will also be on YouTube so that people can see Ashwin's face. We've got to give the people what they want. As I said at the start, show for the people. No, it's been a ripper show, hasn't it, mate? Plenty of conversation starters, thought inducers, and banter beginners. That's what I'm going to say. Plenty of those coming up off the off season in the lead up to cricket season, as we mentioned last week. So thanks again for joining us, guys. Congrats again to the Tigers, and we will see you next week.
Keep kicking goals.